Welcome again, and thank you so much for joining us. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're coming to us from. Today, we're going to be discussing your approach to allergies in your district. So transform your district's approach to allergies. And a disclaimer here for you. The information shared in this presentation is based on general federal guidelines and best practices. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the appropriate state agency, as states might have some more specific guidelines for you. And our disclosure, Nourish Partners is a consultant for omega-3 nutrition, and we do receive monetary compensation for sales. All right, since I'm talking, I'll go ahead and introduce myself first. My name is Angela Gomez. I'm a registered dietitian and strategic marketing manager here at Nourish Partners. I'm a second career dietitian, and I actually started my dietitian career in school nutrition out here in Phoenix, Arizona, where I'm based. I worked for two districts, a small district and a larger district. And I was a menu planner. I managed special diets or meal modifications. And then I also did marketing. And now I'm here at Nourish Partners. Bright, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Again, thank you for joining us today. My name is Bright Djampa. I am the CEO and founder of Omega-3 Nutrition. We are a brain-centric food company. We launched in 2019 with the mission and goal to create absolutely delicious, affordable, and accessible products that help to sustain brain health. So right now we have a granola bar and a cereal, and we've been running for about 4.5 years now. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Bright.
Thank you. So today on the agenda, we're going to be really talking about what are food allergies, special diet forms, and introduction to food allergy research as well. And then we're going to go into a little bit about your special diet policy at your district and ways in which you can improve, change, and iterate it. So it's going to start off with us defining what exactly is a food allergy, right? So we can all be on the same page. Then describing the difference between food allergy and food intolerance. I'm sure many of you already know, but we just like to go over it once more. And then explain research and findings as it pertains to food allergens. And then introducing and identifying new ways to adjust your special diet policy to meet your community and your school district so everyone may reap the complete benefits of nutrients that are available to us. Yeah, and I'm going to give you a little bit of background on myself. My name is Bright Djampa, like I said. I'm based outside of DC in a suburb of Maryland called Rockville. That is also where we have our manufacturing facility. I am a graduate of the University of Maryland. During my time there, I worked with professors to create a brain-centric food item that works to sustain brain health. You guys might be wondering, where does my interest in brain health lie, or where did it come about? Well, I have an older sister that suffers from cerebral palsy, so brain health has always been something that's been close to my heart, and I always wanted to go in that field. Once I realized how much food can impact brain health, that's when I transitioned into becoming a nutrition and food science major and started to work with my professors to create a product that would be really affordable and really accessible for people to consume for their brain health. So as you guys see right in front of you, these are the omega-3 granola bars. We just have two flavors right now, the cinnamon and the cranberry. And then we also have the Mega O's cereal as well. We've been running the company for 5 years. We're in some school districts out here on the East Coast, not out West yet. And we're growing. We're also in a few universities, airlines, and we're working on getting into cruise ships as well. So yeah, that's a little bit of background about me. And to go into it a little bit further, over 68% of adults and 95% of children in the United States do not consume enough omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3 fatty acids are really the central and key nutrient to sustaining brain health. And we believe that once one consumes this nutrient, they are more able to then take care of the neurons and physiological components of their brain, which is very, very central to overall brain health. So yeah, omega-3s are very important. In our particular products, it's a plant-based source of omega-3s. For those of you that are wondering, it is not fish oil. It is through chia and flaxseed, as well as almonds and walnuts, which, if you guys have caught on, is an allergen. But we're going to get in today we're going to talk today about ways to mitigate allergens rather than completely banning them, rather than completely sidelining them. We can really reap the benefits of certain products and of certain nutrients, and our students can as well, through our products and through many products like omega-3 fatty acids, through nuts. So very simple, 9 ingredients, 1,250 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acids per bar. And yeah, it's powerful.
Thank you so much, Bright. And side note, I got sidetracked that you're going to be on cruise ships soon. That's awesome.
Absolutely, yeah.
You'll have to tell me more about that after the webinar. My brain got stopped there.
Absolutely.
Okay, from cruise ships to food allergies. So really quickly, we just want to give a brief overview of food allergies, so that everyone is starting out on the same page with the same information. This, of course, could be a deeper dive. This could be multiple webinars, but we really just want to briefly discuss food allergies, and then we'll transition into the research. So FAIR defines a food allergy as when your body's immune system reacts to a food protein because it's mistaken that food protein as a threat. And the symptoms that occur with a food allergy, they can range from mild to life-threatening. And specifically, when we're talking about life-threatening, we're talking about anaphylaxis. And anaphylaxis is a severe, potentially life-threatening allergic reaction where symptoms affect several areas of the body and could impact several body systems. And that would include breathing and blood circulation. So that's what makes it life-threatening, is anaphylaxis, and anaphylaxis impacting breathing. Now, real briefly, it's really common for people to get food allergies and intolerances mixed up. So we really try to simplify it here and condense it. So a food allergy, again, just like in the definition, it involves the immune system. Symptoms range from mild to life-threatening. Epinephrine is needed to treat anaphylaxis. The brand name of epinephrine that you might be more familiar with would be like an EpiPen. And food allergies, again, they can be life-threatening. Now, a food intolerance involves the digestive system and not the immune system. It does not cause anaphylaxis. It does not require epinephrine, and it's not immediately life-threatening. Now, the disclaimer that I like to give, especially as someone who worked in school districts and specifically worked with food allergies and special diets, we treat food allergies and food intolerances the exact same, even though they're different, because a food intolerance can still make a student feel uncomfortable. It'll impact their learning. They might have a potentially embarrassing situation. So they're just as serious, even though they're not life-threatening like a food allergy. Okay, real quickly, we now have top 9 allergens. It used to be the top 8. Most recently, sesame seeds was added in January of 2023. So now the top 9 allergens specific here to the US is milk, eggs, fish, crustacean shellfish, tree nuts, peanuts, wheat, soybeans, and sesame seeds. Since we are talking about students, I often get the question of, can you outgrow a food allergy? And so here are the ones that are typically lifelong. So typically lifelong, again, everyone's different, but typically lifelong would be finned fish, peanut, shellfish, and tree nuts. Some kiddos might outgrow an egg allergy, a milk allergy, a soy allergy, or a wheat allergy. And again, everyone is different. So this is just kind of a general overview. It doesn't mean that because a kid has an egg allergy that they won't have it in adulthood. It just means that they have a higher chance of outgrowing it potentially. This is another resource that I wanted to share with you. A lot of the things that we reference in this webinar is from FAIR, which is a great nonprofit organization. I highly recommend you check out their website if you're unfamiliar with it. But FAIR stands for Food Allergy Research and Education. And they actually have this interactive map on their website that highlights what the school epinephrine legislation is for each state. So if you're unfamiliar, this is a great resource to start at, just to make sure that you're following the laws that are required in your state. And maybe if there aren't any laws, you can start to advocate for certain school epinephrine legislation. So just to give you a rough idea, about 56 million children in the US have food allergies. And I struggle with big numbers, so it's about 2 children in every classroom. I can imagine that more than the 56 million children in the US. But that's a lot, right? If it's about 2 children in every classroom, some students aren't even aware, students and families, that they have a food allergy. But that's a decent amount of kiddos that we're working with and seeing and interacting with every day that may potentially have a life-threatening food allergy. All right, so the general overview, now switching gears to the special diet form, which is required for school food service departments. It's also known as the medical statement or medical statement for special dietary accommodations. Special diet form is shorter and easier to say, however. So before we get to the medical statement or the special diet form, I want to acknowledge that there's also the individual education program or the IEP plans and the 504 plans. And I want to discuss kind of how these vary and how they compare to the special diet form. So for an IEP, that's a plan for students' educational experience. It's created by a specific IEP team. It's a written document. And some of the content that may be included in that would be learning goals, school services, the student's present level of academic functional performance, services, timing of services, participation in standardized tests, etc. And the services are received at no charge to the family. The 504 plan is more similar to the IEP than the special diet form, but the 504 plan is how the student accesses learning at school, and it's created by a team familiar with the student, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a written document, which I did not know that until I researched that. But again, your state might have specifics, so this is general, so your state might require it to be a written document. The 504 plan might include information such as specific accommodations, supports, services, names who will provide those services or supports, name of a person responsible for ensuring the plan is implemented. And again, these services and support, they're received at no charge to the student or the family. Now, the medical statement is very specific to school food service and specific to schools and organizations that operate the school breakfast program or the National School Lunch Program. So the medical statement or the special diet form is meal modifications based on disability. And it has to be signed by a parent or guardian and a state licensed healthcare professional. Each state identifies a different list of state licensed healthcare professionals. Some states might think it's okay for a nurse practitioner to sign the form, and other states might not. So again, if you're unsure, reaching out to your state agency would be the best plan of action there. The medical statement is a written document, just like an IEP. And at minimum, it must include these 3 things. And this is the federal requirements. There are some states that require additional information. So just according to USDA on the federal level, we have to include information about the impairment that restricts the diet, explanation of accommodations, and the food and or beverages that need to be omitted, and any alternatives if appropriate. Now, these meal modifications are also received at no charge. Hopefully that general overview kind of helps us all out. So an important thing to know, and sometimes not everyone's aware of this, legally, an IEP or a 504 plan can be used to address the student's nutritional needs. So that can be relied on instead of the medical statement. But again, it would have to have those 3 required components that I mentioned on the previous slide. And just as a review, those 3 essential federal components, again, if we had to take an IEP or a 504 instead of the special diet form, those would need to have the food to be avoided, so the allergen, a brief explanation of how exposure to the food affects the student, and the recommended substitutes. And you'll see here that families don't necessarily have to disclose the name of the actual disability here. These are the only 3 requirements. All right, moving on to your team. I want you to think about who is on your special diet team and who's not, and who needs to be, as I kind of just briefly go over this, because it's really important. In my eyes, I think the special diet team should be just big and broad to make sure that all bases are covered. So on the team, I think it's the most important to have the student and the family. They have the most information, they have the experience with it. It's really important that they're a part of any of the processes that are involve them. Of course, the healthcare provider, if you have access to them, or the allergist, school nurse, and the health team at school, of course, is really important. If you have a registered dietitian in your food service department, that's important. The food service department as a whole, the director, the cafeteria manager, the cafeteria staff, it's really important that they're a part of this as well. And of course, teacher, aides, if they do take the bus, transportation is really important. And sometimes I think people forget about that, and more. Basically, you want anyone who's connected to the student to be a part of that team and to be aware of the food allergy that the student has, so everyone can be prepared and ready to support the student. All right, Bright.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Angela. That was so informative. I feel like I learned something too every time. And food labeling rules are also really crucial to understanding your food program and how it works. And if it was left up to companies, we all know they would not act in the best nature. So that's why the FDA had to step in when they created a guideline that companies must follow when labeling their food products. This guideline, as you can see, is on their website, is published. It's very detailed. And it all really started off in 2004 with the passing of the, if you can go to the next slide, with the passing of the Food Allergen Labeling and Consumer Protection Act. This basically required companies like like ours at Omega 3 to list the top eight allergens in our foods, and it required us to label it in a certain way so that it was legible, so that it was obvious, so that people could not miss what allergen was in our food products. It also required us to place the labels on the packaging in a certain manner as well. You can't just, hide it in a small corner or make it, very, very small characters or fonts. You also have to be very, very careful about what you claim, right? I can't say that, our products are going to make your life better and you're just going to start being happier every single day, when clearly that's not the case. And I don't think there's any product out there that works in that way. So what this really did was brought us all on the same page. Still to this day, though, there are some allergens other than the major allergens that were not listed that really don't have to be declared on food products. So the FDA specifically required that all ingredients be labeled in a bigger size font so that those allergens that aren't specifically declared in the allergen section or in the contain section are also legible and also very easy to view. So yeah, then you have the FASTER Act. The FASTER Act took place in 2021, and it added sesame to those top 9 food allergens. And it made sure that everyone would fall under compliance by January of 2023. It was basically just a refresh, some small modifications as well. Other things that were labeled that was changed was what qualifies as a healthy food, what does not. You know, the term healthy was finally worked out by the FDA. What really qualifies as low fat or low sugar, those were also modified by the FDA with this new act passing. And it made it much more clear for people to follow what are actually healthy foods instead of people just claiming it, what are natural foods instead of people just claiming it as well. So this act was really, really good. It was super progressive and really helped push food labeling to the future a good bit. And now I want to kind of show you an incorrect label that we had here at Omega 3. So this label was, you know, first designed by our design team, our art team. They're not labeling specialists. They just make things look nice, right? And they kind of just place everything everywhere, as you can kind of see. Um, if you guys look down towards the ingredients section, right, it says contains tree nuts. Again, that is the old regulation. Before, in 2004 to up till 2021, you used to be able to say contains tree nuts and you were absolutely fine. Also, this is the back of the Mega O's pouch, and you can see that the nutrition facts is actually on the wrong side of the label. It is on the right side. The FDA wants all food labelings to now to transition, especially on a pouch or bag item, to the left side, specifically the left top corner. As you can see, it's very specific rules, very standardized, so that it's easier for people to process the information quickly when shopping or even in a K through 12 school setting. And let me show you a correct label. So now, as you guys can see here, if you go down to the ingredients area where it says contain, we say contain almonds and walnuts. And yes, we list it twice. In the ingredients, we say almonds and walnuts, and then we say again almonds and walnuts to make sure that you clearly understand that our products have nuts in them. Now, you can see the labeling for the nutrition facts is now on the correct side in the upper left-hand corner. Again, making it much more easier. We made it bigger, much more legible. We made it the font stand out a little bit more, so it's more pronounced. And we shifted things a bit as well. Again, this helps with the actual consumer, whether it's students, whether it's you grocery shopping. It makes it far easier for you to just simply consume for you to simply comprehend and consume what our product actually has inside of it and understand that this product will work for me or it will not. So yeah, with that being said, we want to the next, we want to also talk about voluntary labeling. Now, this goes into the facet of may contain X, may contain traces of Y. For example, right? If you make a nut item, right? A lot of the times that nut item is also processed in a facility with multiple nuts that may not even be in your food. Say, for example, we have almonds and walnuts, right? A lot of other companies have logistic chains and manufacturing chains where their almond and walnut products are processed right next to their peanut products. In our case, that is not the situation. We own all of our manufacturing. So we specifically only have almonds and walnuts within our products, and it is separated from that peanut or any other nuts that may be within the vicinity. They are not in the facility. So if your product is manufactured in an area where there's other allergens such as wheat, walnuts, and it's not even directly in your product, you are encouraged to voluntarily label your product as saying, hey, it may contain soy, or it may contain wheat, or it may contain this other nut, despite it actually not being an official ingredient in our product because it was manufactured in an area where those allergens are also present. So yeah, and that's a little background about that.
Thanks, Bright. And I do want to say, as a dietitian and as someone who has read so many labels for students, I love that you put the contain statement and say like almonds and walnuts, and not just in the parentheses, because it's just easier to find, especially when you're scanning, multiple spec sheets. So thank you for doing that from a dietitian who's worked in schools.
Absolutely. We want to make it easier on everybody to know what is in the products, and why they're in them as well.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, so here is some of the research, the up and coming research that we wanted to share with you today. And all this research I'm about to share is specifically about an early introduction of food allergens to infants and toddlers. So currently, and this is something that you may be more familiar with right now, there's been a recommendation by doctors to delay the introduction of top allergens. So this is how we got to that recommendation. In 1997 to 2011, the CDC reported that the prevalence of food allergies in children in the US increased by 50%. And so then the American Academy of Pediatrics recommended delaying the introduction of top allergens, which is totally, I can see why they did that, because an increase by 50% of food allergies, which is a potentially life-threatening situation, I can see why they would say just delay it altogether, right? But unfortunately, the delayed introduction was not well grounded in scientific evidence. And so now you're seeing more doctors start to push for an introduction of a wide variety of foods that are age appropriate, of course, for infants and toddlers. And some of that is based on the research I'm going to share right now. So one of the studies that was published in 2015 was the LEAP study, and that stood for Learning Early About Peanut Allergy. So the focus wasn't on any of the other top 9 allergens, it was specifically peanuts. And it studied prevention and did not address treatment. So as you may already know, there's no cure for food allergies. So they focus on the prevention. And the participants, the children that they enlisted in the LEAP study, they had to be classified as high risk. And what they determined was high risk for the study is the children had to have severe eczema, an egg allergy, or both. However, children with a peanut allergy were not included. And again, that's because they were focused on prevention. They weren't focused on treatment. So how did the LEAP study get conducted? Well, they took infants from age 4 to 10 months, and they split them into 2 different groups. The first group avoided peanuts, and then the second group was given age-appropriate peanut foods several times a week. Now, what they found is for babies at high risk for peanut allergy, so again, that high risk being they had an egg allergy or severe eczema or both, eating peanut foods early and regularly actually reduced the risk of peanut allergy by more than 80% compared to the group of kiddos who just avoided peanuts altogether. So since that had such a positive result, right, of peanut allergy prevention, they did another study on top of that, and they called it LEAP On. And what that stood for was the persistence of oral tolerance to peanut. So basically, they studied those same participants from the LEAP study to see what it looked like further down the road. And the questions the researchers were asking for this study was, what would happen if children who ate peanut foods from an early age then avoided peanut for a full year? So this would be that second group that was introduced to peanut foods. And they're saying, what if we stopped for a full year introducing them to peanut? They've already been introduced, now we're going to stop it. The follow-up question to that for them was, would their risk of developing peanut allergy increase if they didn't eat peanut for that year, even though they were introduced early on? And what they found was no. So the children who ate peanuts from infancy to age 5 and then avoided peanuts for a year after, so from age 5 to 6, they were still 74% less likely to have a peanut allergy than that other group of children who had consistently avoided peanut foods from infancy to age 6. So basically, to sum that up, the LEAP study and the LEAP on study findings provided clear evidence that introducing peanut foods early can lower the odds of developing peanut allergy for many babies at high risk for the disease, which is really positive, right? So let's talk about another study that wasn't about peanuts and was actually about egg. So this is the EAT study, and it stood for Inquiring About Tolerance, and it was published in 2016. And again, this is how they conducted the study. They had two groups again, but these were younger babies, and they were 3 months, and they were breastfed babies, exclusively breastfed, and they were split into two groups. One of the groups was introduced to a very specific sequence of 6 of the 9 top allergens, which were egg, fish, milk, peanut, sesame, and wheat. And as you might have guessed, the other group was not introduced to any of those top allergens, and they continued to exclusively breastfeed until they were 6 months old. And so they were observed, both groups were observed over time. And what they found is when the early introduction group and the exclusively breastfed group were compared at ages 1 and 3, so again, they were 3 months old when they started the study, they compared them at 1 and 3, the rates of allergy to the 6 foods weren't significantly different. So this showed that the early introduction of allergenic foods did not increase the baby's risk for food allergy. So again, both of these are leaning towards early exposure being one of the best ways to prevent food allergies for high-risk kiddos. Then in 2019, they did a new analysis of this study, and they found that early food introduction made babies sensitized to 1 or more of the 6 foods that they were introduced to, which means they were less likely to develop an allergy to 1 or more of those foods. And so what these studies are finding is that an early introduction of peanut and egg was lowering the risk of allergy, which is really promising. And then the EAT study findings basically found that early introduction of egg can provide protection against egg allergy for at least some children at high risk for developing egg allergy. And of course, guidance on early egg introduction is likely to evolve as more evidence becomes available, but it's looking promising. So I share all this research with you just to give you that information as research as a resource. It's a resource to us, it's developing. I think it's ideal to be aware of current research when we're dealing with food allergies, food intolerances, other food-related disabilities. And families and their healthcare providers, they have the ultimate say, right? So there may be some doctors who are not on board with some of this research yet, which is okay. It's our job to keep the students safe in our classrooms and our cafeterias. So this research, I'm just kind of sharing to update you on it if you weren't familiar with it yet. But knowing that, again, each family is different, each individual is different. All right, so this connects to our allergen-free policies. And by allergen-free policies, an example would be like a peanut-free school or a tree nut-free school. And this connects, oh wait, let me do the invitation first. I was gonna jump ahead. Okay, so I wanna invite you to revisit your special diet policies and determine what works best for the students you serve. Here's the connection now, getting ahead of myself. So allergen-free school policies like a peanut-free or a tree nut-free school, they kind of mirror these dated delayed introduction recommendations that the American Academy of Pediatrics first had after 2011. And there was another study, I won't go too deep into it, but a 2017 study identified higher rates of epinephrine or EpiPen use in schools with peanut-free policies compared to the schools that did not have a peanut-free policy, which is kind of scary, right? Because you feel like if you have this peanut-free policy, that it provides that extra layer of safety. And this study found that there was higher rates of epinephrine use in the peanut-free schools. And that might be because of a false sense of security. So some things that I thought of that could come along with that, just based on my experience, is if you have a peanut-free or a tree nut-free policy, you may have less people double checking food labels, right? They're assuming like we don't order peanut or tree nut containing foods, like we don't really have to check the labels like we would if we didn't have that policy in place. Some sites might not be prioritizing staff training on food allergies because they have a peanut-free or a tree nut-free site. It's important to know that families assume that the site is still taking the same precautions regardless, and that might not be happening. It's also harder to control the food, the contents of the food, if the food is prepared off-site. So if you have a food service program that's primarily heat and serve, they don't have enough equipment to do scratch cooking. A lot of what's going into the food and how it's handled is not up to the schools, right? And as Bright mentioned, the precautionary labeling, the may contain or may contain traces of, that's voluntary. So that doesn't mean that cross contact didn't happen to these foods just because it doesn't say that it contains peanuts or tree nuts. Really important to note. So I would recommend a proactive strategy, regardless if you had a peanut-free school or a tree nut-free school or not. And so what I encourage folks to do is to prioritize food allergy awareness, food allergy education, food allergy training, and that's for all staff on campus, really. It's not just food service staff, it's for all staff on campus. Being proactive with your policy and procedures that you have in place for special diets. And most importantly, I think this gets forgotten sometimes, is the emergency preparedness, including food allergies in your emergency preparedness plan. So not only how to respond to anaphylaxis, how to administer an EpiPen, but also what if a pipe burst and they can't use water to prepare lunch for the students? Do you have a backup meal to feed students who have food allergies or food intolerances? So just thinking through that stuff before it happens, right? Being proactive about it. Another thing that I saw that I think is a great idea is, you have fire drills. If you practice a food allergy drill, what happens when a student is undergoing anaphylaxis? What is the drill? Who needs to be contacted? Where is the EpiPen located? Is it in the cafeteria? Is it on the student? Is it in the nurse's office? Just really thinking through those horrible worst case scenarios that none of us want to experience so that we're prepared.
Wow, that was really wonderful, Angela. And I love the research, the studies behind it. That's always good to see. I'm someone that loves relying on actual facts and evidence, and it's, really eye-opening just to see the differences between what we think would work and what actually ends up working. So with that being said, we want to propose some action steps for you all to kind of follow. And it really starts with, assessing your district's special diet policy, sitting down with your team, understanding those gaps that Angela just eloquently highlighted, right? What are the emergency steps that we are not covering? Are all of our bases covered? Are we just doing blanket bans, or are we actually targeting and being aware of what students should avoid, how they can be more aware of foods that are good for them, but may not work for their particular allergy that they may have? So identifying those policies and strengthening the gaps is really central to the overall strength of the program itself. We've provided a sheet. If you guys have not received the sheet yet, it was a special diet policy audit worksheet. We encourage you guys to utilize that sheet. It really helps break down and identify what you guys currently have in the system in place and ways in which you can iterate it, make it better, make it stronger, and overall more impactful for your community, for your students, food service workers, nurses, everybody. Because at the end of the day, it really does take a holistic approach to have a solid and strong food program that not only protects the students, but also works for them to reap all of the nutrients that are available out there and all of the benefits for the foods that are available out there. Um, yeah. And like we just said, that resource is out there, the special diet policy audit worksheet. It's in depth, is pretty lengthy. I'll let Angela kind of talk about that a little bit further. Sorry, got
Yeah,
cut.
yeah. No, that's okay. That's okay. So this freebie, we put a lot of labor and love into. Again, meal modifications and special diets have my heart. I think it's really important for us to address these. So this special diet policy audit worksheet, it was dropped in the chat by Lisa. So you can download that. I think it's about 8 pages. And it really just kind of allows you to look at the policy you have, or maybe you don't have, and you're just starting to build, and kind of really writing out like, okay, this is the specific staff who will support this. This is the specific trainings that we'll do. And we give suggestions on there, of course. There's resource links on there as well. We think it's a really great resource, and we hope that you find it really helpful. And we're open to any feedback too, if you think there's something that we should add for folks on there. Okay.
Absolutely. And we'd love to wrap up by kind of telling you all what you guys are going to get today for attending the webinar. Omega-3 will be providing the mini bars. These are 1 grain equivalent mini bars, are three pouches of our Mega O cereal. This cereal is already compliant with the new guidelines that are coming in through the USDA with the sugar requirement for cereals. I know most cereals that you guys currently supply are not compliant. This cereal is under that 2 gram of sugar included mark. And then the 12-pack bars, the 12-pack of full-size bars. So both of these Mega O cereal and the full-size bars are 2 grain equivalents. Right now, our Mega O cereal and our mini bars are in schools. Our full-size bars are not in schools as of the moment. We are still working on that. I would like to say for the Mega O cereal, it is technically 2.73 grain equivalent, just to be very, very accurate. I know Lisa will appreciate that. Um, and yeah, you guys will all be receiving this free. It will be coming in your guys' inbox, mails and address very soon. And you know, we're very thankful for you guys attending the webinar today.
Yeah. And Bright, did you get my address to send me some? Because I'm not lying. Even if even if we didn't work with Bright, they're really tasty. They taste really, really good. They're great. Are you gonna send me some, Bright? Yeah.
Oh yes, we will definitely be sending you some as well. You'll find me
Yes.
the TikTok now.
Okay. Thanks, Bright. You're so kind. All right. So for professional development, for those of you who need to track your hours, this counts towards it. So this would be the key area and subtopic. Key area 1,000, subtopic 1,160. Sorry, I always struggle to read big numbers in front of people, so forgive me. But if you need to track your hours, that's there available to you. I also provided additional resources on here. So these 3 are again, from FAIR. These are hyperlinked, but it's a 30-minute free training. This one is really great. This recognizing and responding to anaphylaxis. It's a 10-minute free training. So especially for cafeteria staff who are super busy, preparing meals throughout the day, 10 minutes, it seems pretty doable. So it's great. And then there's a song for students, which is super cute. Stop, look, ask, and go. And then FAIR, again, has tons of resources. They have school posters and infographics. They have a lot of this in Spanish as well, which is great. I'm not sure if they're working on some other languages, translating their materials, but they definitely have a lot in Spanish, which I found super helpful being in Phoenix, Arizona. And then this is our contact information if you want to partner up with us, you want to collaborate. As you can tell, Bright is a super sweet and knowledgeable person. He's great to talk to and connect with. So if you want to connect with Bright, if you want to connect with us and you want some more special diet support, please reach out and we can see how we can support you with that. And then we can open it up for questions. I know a few questions came in the registration, and I'm happy to address those. But since you all are live here, I wanted to see if anyone had any questions or any knowledge or wisdom that you wanted to share based off your experience. Bright and I are not the only ones. Lisa, we're not the only ones on the call with expertise, knowledge, and wisdom to share. So if you have anything to share with the group, I'd love to open it up for that as well.
Angela, while we wait for some questions to come in, we can kick it off with some of the registration questions we got. It was, and I guess, Bright, this is a great question for you too. So we kind of got two questions and I would love to kind of smush it into one here. So we got several questions about, thinking about those more specialized diets, puree diets, diabetic, glucose controlled diets, gluten-free. Bright, I know that your products are gluten-free, so that's always super helpful. But one of the questions really came around shopping for those special diet products in the K-12 space with those students that have a wide array of allergies. So maybe gluten-free, dairy-free, egg-free, soy-free. I know we see that all the time when we support schools with their menus. So Angela and Bright, do you have any insight or feedback as to how to navigate those more complex special diets that we're seeing in schools?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can start. So a lot of the times, one of the best tips I ever received from the first director I worked with, we had 39 schools and I was managing all the meal modifications for those 39 schools. And one of the best advice that she gave me was to ask the families. So if a student had multiple foods they had to avoid, literally just asking the parent or guardian, like, what are you doing at home? Like, what are some of the foods you eat at home? Because it might have been something like a deconstructed kind of thing or a bowl thing that I may have not thought of that's working for their student and potentially something their student already likes. So again, earlier I talked about like the students and the families being a part of the team, and that's a way to loop them in, utilizing them as a resource. So I think that's one really great tip I received early on that I found really helpful.
Yeah, and I would just add on to that there are certain products out there in the market right now that do accommodate a wide variety of dietary needs that are gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free. Our products as well do fall into that category. And I think a lot of companies are now trying to make an effort to make it very, very clear what their products do have and what they don't have, right? By placing big labels, clear labels with X marks on them so students can know this product does not have peanuts, this product does not have shellfish or is gluten-free. Very easy for the students to understand, even from just reading the front rather than having to turn it around as well.
Awesome. That's some great feedback here. And yes, Bright's products are delicious. Jillian, let us know what you think once you receive those. And confirming, I did check with Bright because they have oats, but they are confirmed gluten-free oats, which is always nice to get that clarification. Okay, so Angela, kind of tying back to what you were saying is like incorporating the students and the parents when feasible. What are some best practices for either getting information from parents that may not be super communicative or maybe hard to get a hold of, and making sure you get the information you need while also respecting the communication style of the families. And also knowing that sometimes there's different communication channels within each district. Maybe you need to go through the nurse or the IEP coordinator. So what are some best practices and tips for that level of communication directly with the families?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I actually received this one a lot. So I think, again, leaning on your team, your team is really important. So you might find that maybe the secretary in the front office has a really great relationship with that family, and you haven't been able to get a hold of that family, but that secretary has that relationship with them. So maybe it's utilizing their relationship and seeing if you can find an in to get the information you need to keep the student safe. And maybe that's like a three-way call, or this is extra effort. I do admit that. And we want our students to feel safe, but maybe it's like, hey, does the family drop in regularly at a certain time where I might be able to pop into the office and be like, hey, I'm the dietitian, I really want to get this menu down for your student. So connecting with your team and seeing who does have the best relationship when maybe the communication with you is delayed or not there, I think is really important. I feel like I could give more information, but I would be talking too much. Bright, is there anything that you've heard from school districts that you've worked with that have worked for them in communication with the families at all?
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I've also heard of people going after athletic programs, right? Even like after school programs or supper programs where sometimes you have a parent, right, come and pick up the student, or you have a PTA association meeting after school hours. Those are also where those conversations would take place, and they're able to navigate some of those dietary restrictions that a student may face.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, great point. Okay, so I want to tie into another question too. This kind of ties into the resource we have and bringing a little more clarity around that in evaluating, assessing, or even just creating your special diet policy. It's not necessarily required to have a special diet policy, but it's always great to have an SOP or something in place so that everyone really knows, like, what is that snowball of events once you learn about an allergy, and making sure that that student is safe and supported as quickly as possible. So Angela, Bright, do you have any recommendations as far as getting started with reevaluating, assessing, or creating your special diet policy? Do you find that typically falls on the food service director? Are there nurses that typically drive that, or, business services, anything like that, principals? Or do you see that some districts also involve like parent groups or wellness committees for feedback on those policies?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I feel like a lot of times it falls on the food service director to coordinate the special diet policy and procedures. And I think it's important that the school food service director is involved, because we're the ones handling the food. The food service department's handling the food. And so I do think it's key that the director, and if they're lucky enough to have a dietitian on staff, to also have them involved and to kind of be this is not the word, but it's the one that's coming to mind right now, the center hub, that is the one branching out, reaching out to the nurses, the teachers, making sure they're on the 504 plan or IEP meetings, like making those connections, making the connections with even like the therapist, the occupational therapist, the speech therapist, for those pureed diets that you mentioned earlier, Lisa. So I think that's key, but involving multiple people on campus, like I've mentioned. And also, I think it's a great idea. This was a great question. I think it's a great idea to involve parent groups. If you're going to make a policy, I think this just should be across the board and in the world. If you're going to make a policy about folks, like the folks who it most impacts should be involved in that. So I do think that having parents, families, even students, like some older students, give their input on certain policies for food allergies because they live it day to day, I think is really important, and is a great idea if you're able to do that. As far as wellness committee, I think that's great too, because the wellness committees I've been a part of, there has been a nurse there, there has been a PE teacher in there. So getting that feedback, I think is really helpful. Again, taking it back to my team approach, like the more you can expand out, the more perspectives you can get in, the better, because there's going to be certain people who are going to, someone from transportation is going to have a very specific question that me as a dietitian did not think of in regards to a student with food allergy. So hopefully that answered the question because that was very long. Right? Do you have anything to add to the speech I just gave at all?
No, I don't have much to add. I think Angela really just touched on it. And it's really just when you sit down as a director, as a nutritionist for your school, even a nurse maybe, don't create it in a silo, right? Have everyone involved, have all stakeholders, students even. I know you guys have to get the students involved, right? Because, you know, they care about the tastes. So have all the stakeholders involved and there and present so that it is a really effective policy.
Fantastic. We're running up against the 1 hour right here. I wanted to ask just one final question, and then we'll wrap it up here. We will be sending out a copy of the recording and the resource to all of you as well, and you'll be getting your samples. So one final question, just from menu planner perspective. One of the questions we got were, what are some recommendations for diversifying breakfast menus for allergy diets and special diets? What are those new and innovative approaches or ideas to special meals that you're currently implementing right now, or that you're seeing out in the space?
Well, you know, I know this company that makes a cereal pouch, you know what I mean, with a biodegradable spoon inside. Might be called omega-3, might not be, you know. And it's a 2-grain equivalent, dairy-free, gluten-free, soy-free, peanut-free, but we do have almonds and walnuts in our product. But, you know, in all honesty, not to give our, you know, competitors a boost, but there are also products that are coming to the market like that as well. People are, you know, increasingly becoming a competitive space, and there are more products that really do align with a wide variety of dietary restrictions and dietary needs, such as our Mega O's cereal at omega-3.
Thanks, Bright. What I'll add to that is what I found helpful is also researching different cultural foods. And by different, I mean different to me. So maybe some foods that I haven't experienced before, looking at those, because I have celiac disease. So there's other cultural foods that I can actually really thoroughly enjoy, and there's not a lot of gluten in them. So I think branching out where you're looking is important, and also making sure in the recipes that you create that it's appreciating that culture and respecting that food as it was originally intended. But I think sometimes just opening our mind and searching for new perspectives can help with creating some of those new food recipes for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I always learn from you on this topic. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Thank you all so much for attending. Thank you, Bright. Thank you, Angela. And thank you everyone here. If there's anything anyone on this call can do to support you, don't hesitate to reach out. And thanks for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a good one,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody. Thank you.